Order in the court! Order in the goddamn court!
Sir, you're out of order.
All right.
What's up, Spurs Nation? Welcome back to Order on the Court special mailbag edition. Today we're going to be talking about just about everything Lonnie Walker related. First, I want to introduce everybody. I'm Harrison from San Antonio Spurs Talk. With us, we got the man from Spurs Wave and Spurs Dynasty on Instagram. Also, Clan the Spurs Fan on YouTube. It's Destin. What's up, Destin?
What's up, man? I'm doing good.
Then I got my partner in crime on San Antonio Spurs Talk, one of the biggest Spurs fans I know, Mr. Air Force, Mr. Tyler.
What's going on, y'all?
And then last but certainly not least, good collaborator with Spurs Talk over the last couple months, we got Matty from SpursFanBlog. What's up, Matty?
What's up, man? Excited to talk some Lonnie Walker with you guys tonight.
Yeah. So just a brief thing. This is the first mailbag episode. Y'all probably aren't seeing Rob from Bucking Spurs with us. This is going to start being a normal thing. Obviously, we have our own schedules to cover and different content we're trying to get out to you guys. So we're going to try to have about 3 to 4 of us on these mailbags every time we record them. So today, Rob's sitting this one out. He's been putting a lot of work in for our website and stuff. But we'll try to get some content with all 5 of us out soon. Got some surprising stuff with guests coming up. So a lot on the way just to catch you up. But as I said, today's topic is Lonnie Walker. And we fielded some questions from you guys throughout the week, so we'll just dive right in. So a lot of the questions kind of revolved around the same thing. So I'm going to group a couple of them in together just to make it easier on us answering them and try to answer as much as we can. So I guess the first question I want to start with, let me shout out the people that gave them to us. Let's see. We got Louty_Mo on Instagram responding to Spurs Wave. And then we got Jacobo.Mura17 asking, what is Lonnie's true position? And I'm going to group it and say, what's his true position and what position allows him to reach his ceiling? And based on that, what do you think his ceiling is? So I'm going to start with Matty on this one.
Can you actually say that again? You kind of lagged out on my end.
Yeah, that's my internet. It's what is Lonnie's ceiling and what position on the court allows him to best achieve that ceiling?
That's a tough question. You know, when we talked about DeJounte Murray, Harrison, you like to compare him, talk about ceilings and floors. You like to compare him to, NBA players today. And I don't really know what his floor kind of is. He's just so athletic and so talented. He's really similar to a lot of guys, but I kind of look at his ceiling as like a Donovan Mitchell type player. I see a lot of similarities in their athleticism, kind of the things that they can do on a basketball court. I think Lonnie's actually probably a better perimeter defender right now than Donovan Mitchell, at least in the small sample size that we've seen. I think, and we talked about this, I don't know if it was, I think it was on our DeJounte Murray mailbag, that I think Lonnie should definitely be more of a 2. I think he's a little bit out of position at the 3. I mean, when you kind of get down to it, the details, I mean, it doesn't really matter. But, I mean, I look at he's like 6'5", about 192. Maybe if you can put on some muscle this offseason, beef up a little bit. But I would prefer to see him more the 2 guard. I think he can handle the ball. I think he can be the primary ball handler in the offense. I think he can run the offense. But as far as his ceiling goes, I look at a guy like Donovan Mitchell. I kind of see that all-star level potential, just the athleticism and the things he can do on both sides of the court. I'm not saying I think he's going to, be exactly like Donovan Mitchell. I'm not saying I think he's going to be an all-star next year or anything like that. I just think that as far as ceilings go and potential, I think that's a good guy to compare him to and a good guy to look at.
And a good play style, too. I mean, they play very similarly. And you were talking about how I like comparisons. I look at some of Donovan Mitchell's comparisons, and they're identical to what scouts are saying about Lonnie Walker, which goes into what you were saying. Everybody kind of wants to show Lonnie as, like, if you want to go old school, you got Eddie Jones, you got O.J. Mayo in there, and maybe
O.J. Mayo
is a Brandon Roy type guy. I think definitely that's sort of his upper tier ceiling. You look at some all-star selections of all NBA teams, just leading the team to wins. So I'm going to throw it to Destin next. And to preface this, I know Destin's a big Lonnie Walker fan. He's real high on him. So I'm interested to hear what he has to say because I know he's got some insight on this. What do you think, Destin?
Yeah, similar to what Matty said, where the comparisons to Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, I mean, we all know that he's the one who basically said that if he could compare one player to himself, it would be Lonnie Walker. But I see Lonnie Walker as being better than Donovan Mitchell. I think Donovan Mitchell is a great player overall, and I think that he's a star player. I see Lonnie Walker as potentially becoming a superstar. I think his defense is heavily underrated. When he wants to play defense, he is a very good defender. I know that doesn't sound, great, but, similar to, LeBron, when he wants to play defense, he can be a really good defender. So when it comes to Lonnie Walker, man, as far as what his ceiling is, I could see him being the next great Spur. I'm high on Derek White, but Derek White's ceiling, I don't think it's like superstar level. I mean, he's my favorite player, but I understand that it's not superstar level. It's just going to be a really good facilitator, one of the best point guards we've had, and I keep it at that. DeJounte Murray, I don't know what his ceiling is, but when it comes to Lonnie Walker, I think out of the young guys that we have, I think he's the one guy that could become that superstar. Like he has everything that you can ask for. He has a shot. He has a 3-point shot. He has quickness. He's fast. He can dunk. He can play defense. When he played defense on James Harden, that was nasty. Like, I know James Harden ended with like 60 points, but most of it came from the line. It was BS shots. So
that's just James Harden.
Basically, dude, he locked him down for the most part. And then not to mention that he's clutch, like really clutch. He has a lot of heart. So as far as what his ceiling is, I know we're always looking for the next Manu Ginobili. I'm not saying he's the next Manu because you'll never have another Manu Ginobili, but he's the next Lonnie Walker, and he's going to be, I think, a superstar. Similar to what Manu Ginobili was for a lot of his career, was a superstar. So he's going to be that. Yeah,
for sure. And, I think to your point, you were talking about you think he could be better than Donovan Mitchell. And I think a lot of that comes to defense. Donovan's obviously one of the best offensive players in the league. There's no doubt about that. He's one of the most athletic guards in the league. And Lonnie can match that. But like you were saying, it's just – for me watching Lonnie, it all just comes so easy to him, man. Like even the IQ aspect on defense, it's just like a natural instinct to be where he is. With Harden, he's out there giving him fits, and there's some of the best defensive players in the league can't even think their way around how to defend him. And he just got out there and did it without even thinking about it. And I think that's what makes him so deadly. But we've kind of had two similar answers. I know he's probably going to agree with him, but let's throw it to Tyler and see what he's got on the issue.
I mean, we kind of touched on it on our last live podcast. It's a sleeping alpha. I mean, we saw the way he took over that Indiana game. We saw the way he absolutely dominated and took over that Houston game. I mean, his ceiling is just – I agree with Clan. I mean, he's the next – I agree he's probably the next superstar of this team. He's going to – if he stays here his whole career, his jersey at number 1 is going to be hanging in the rafters. But he has the capabilities of being the main guy on this team. He has the capabilities to run the show defensively, and you pair him along with defensive people like DeJounte, Derek, and Keldon. And then on offense, he can score 20, 30 points, possibly even 40 points a game. So, like we said, it all comes down to what we said in our live podcast a couple days ago. It was he's the sleeping alpha. He doesn't realize what he has just quite yet. And when he does, it's going to be over for the rest of the league.
And I'll say I'm going to try to tie in these things because they all kind of relate. We talk about the sleeping alpha, and I know there's a lot of Spurs fans who are wondering, why isn't he starting consistently? Why isn't he playing 30 minutes a game? Like you said, we touched on this, but I think we're all in agreement. He might just not realize how good he is yet. And just from watching how Coach Pop reacts with him on the floor and all, he wants him to get in that mindset where he can take over games. Now, granted, I understand that's hard when we're playing through DeRozan and we're playing through Aldridge and all that. But I do think that in the minutes he's been out there by himself, Pop's been wanting him to show him, hey, I can do this. I'm ready to take the reins. I think at the start of the season, he wasn't ready for that. Towards the end, we started seeing a little bit more. So a big question we've been getting on here, we have it from let me find his name in here to read to you. Islam_5500. We also have a couple more asking, when will we finally see him start? So I'll pitch that to you guys. Do you think he's shown enough this past season to be a day one starter next year, or do you think it'll be a gradual process going into next year? I'll reverse that and throw it to Tyler first off here.
I don't think he showed quite enough to be a day one starter from the start of the season. Plus, it all just depends on what happens this offseason. Does DeMar walk? There's just so many factors going into it. But I say he starts off the season as a very prominent six-man role. He's that first person off the bench. He kind of takes – because most of that has either been Derek White coming off the bench first or Patty Mills being that six-man. So I think he starts the season off as that prominent six-man, and then maybe somewhere around December, early January, he takes that starting spot depending on what happens this offseason.
All right. Yeah, now I'm going to amend the question a little bit here for each of you, and I'll go back to you right here, Tyler. I'm going to say let's assume DeMar walks. Let's assume Bryn Forbes does not come back. That's two of our starting players gone. Who do you want starting in that
And
case?
obviously Lonnie.
Lonnie, okay. I was going to see if you would go with Lonnie or Derek in that case. So I'll throw it to you next, Destin. Essentially, do you think he's ready to be a day one starter? Assuming we lose Forbes and DeRozan, who would you throw in there, Lonnie or somebody else?
I mean, as far as what the team is right now, I don't know if there's really a question whether or not he should be or could be a starter. I think he could be a starter. I guess it depends as far as like how I feel about it. I think it just depends, or it's all surrounded around what we do with Murray. And at this point, it looks like Murray is going to be the starting point guard, period. So if he's the starting point guard, period, and that's just how the direction we're going to go in with it, then I would say that Lonnie Walker should be a starter with DeJounte Murray. He's the one that I feel like they click the best with. I feel like he complements Murray. Hopefully Murray, develops a little bit more in his shot and everything going into next season. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, as far just how this team is set up, yeah, he's a starter. And I don't know if anybody would necessarily debate that Bryn Forbes, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but that Bryn Forbes should start over a multitude of people on the team. Like, there's a lot of people on the team that I felt as if they could have started in that starting lineup over Bryn Forbes.
Mm-hmm.
And Lonnie Walker was by far one of them. So, yeah, as far as is he a starter or not? Yeah, of course he is. And I know a lot of us kind of want that, it seems like out of Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu, we always want Manu back. Like, that's one of the main things we want. We're like, who's the next Manu? Who's going to come off the bench and be that sixth man? But in reality, not everybody's path is going to be set up like the big three was. We might not even have a big three. So I think that the fact of the matter is, yeah, I think he's a starter, especially in today's NBA. And I think he can thrive being a starter if they give him the opportunity.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And I'll get into a little bit more after I ask Matty. But, Matty, hearing kind of different points of view on this question, what do you think? We have Tyler saying maybe not a day one, but towards December, January. And then we have Destin saying, yeah, I think right away. So, let's split the difference here. What's your call on it?
Well, you brought up, I was going to bring it up, the fact of whether or not DeMar and Bryn are going to be back is going to play in a huge factor, I think. Let's just say for hypothetical sake, they're gone. I would definitely see Lonnie in that 2 spot, hopefully right away. Or depends on, where they see him at. It's kind of a 2 or 3. Maybe, if Bryn and DeMar are gone, they would move, start Keldon at the 3 and Lonnie at the 2. I'm going to be a little bit of a hypocrite here because I've said a number of times, I want to see DeJounte and Derek kind of start together, but I'm going to kind of backtrack here. And although I would love to see that, don't get me wrong, but I think Derek is more of that six-man role. I think Lonnie has a higher ceiling than Derek, just to be blunt. I think we've seen Derek's, or at least closer to his ceiling. I mean, you got to remember, Derek's like 24 years old. He's not really all that young anymore. And don't get me wrong, I love me some Derek White. I just think that, with Lonnie's uncapped potential and with how high his ceiling is, I really love to see him kind of get that jump at the 2 right away. I was actually at the first game he started when he in Milwaukee. I think that was his first starting job, right? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and naturally it was his first starting game, so he was kind of timid on offense, pretty passive, but I really saw the confidence in his shot. He really didn't look afraid. He was making the right plays on offense and defense, and he's so freaking athletic and so strong, and he does have a pretty good IQ that he's going to do good things on the court no matter what. I think we just need to see him kind of grow in that confidence, as we talked about on the show a number of times. And I think people would see him get pulled during games and they would think it would be Popovich pulling him for making mistakes. And I thought that too, but then I go back and watch the film, and it's like, he's not pulling him for making mistakes. He's pulling him for not taking chances. He's pulling him for not, taking over the offense. I mean, like you said, Harrison Popovich wants him to kind of take that role and say, hey, I'm going to take the ball. I'm going to take over the offense. I'm going to take over this game. And, like we said, we've seen him do that. We've seen him do it against Houston. We've seen him do it against Boston on the road. Like, he has that capability. So as far as whether he, should or can start, I think he's perfectly capable. But given our current roster situation, I still think he's going to be an off the bench role next year. But I think he could definitely blossom into a starter next year, pretty even sooner before later, really, depending on how we're doing as a team. But can you imagine Patty Mills, Derek White, and Lonnie Walker coming off the bench right away? That's a pretty good backup backcourt. That's a pretty solid rotation in the backcourt. So, but yeah, I'm sorry. I'd love to be more divisive on this topic, but I gotta, kind of agree with everybody a little bit. But I'd love to see him start, but I just don't think we're going to see it next year. So I guess that's my take. I don't think we're going to see him start next year.
So I'll take my answer one step a little further. I think I'm on basically the same page with Destin. We talk about how Bryn Forbes has kind of been the starter in there, and how Lonnie Walker's probably the main guy we take over him. Towards the end of the season, we saw Lonnie overtake Bryn in that starting spot quite a few times. And one thing I was noticing, Pop kind of switched up the rotation situation. Teams he felt like he could get away with less defense and he wanted a bit more catch and shoot, he'd throw Forbes in there. But the vast majority of them, about the last 10, 11 games, he was throwing Lonnie in there because he wants the defense, the IQ. And I'm going to take it a step further. This is not by any means a prediction, but I think he's a day one starter next season. I also think he's our George Hill guy, where he's our young guy who averages the most minutes of anybody on the team. At least he needs to, because when I see Lonnie, I look at a guy who's a perfect fit with anybody in that rotation. He's a perfect fit next to Murray. I mean, they're speedy. They're both athletic. They're both defensive terrors. And then if you pair him with White, White's very competent on defense. You got him with Lonnie. Both of them have court vision and ability to hit from the outside and slash. I mean, they can feed big men. It's like the ideal situation for us. He can work as a bench player, as a starter, with just about anybody on the team. And I think a guy with that much utility is somebody that you have to go to from the get. And just based on seeing how he was kind of towards the end of the season, I can say I think maybe not towards the start, like I say, but I think at some point early on in next season, he will be a starter in that rotation. It just makes too much sense to say no.
So let's pose a question. If DeMar does come back, would you mind a starting lineup of DJ, Lonnie, and DeMar running the three still?
See, I've never been a fan of DeMar at the three, but I mean, I don't think Pop is going to start Keldon at the three yet. He just, Yeah, it seems like he always waits at least a year or some way into the year to get them some experience, and I'm okay with that. But Rudy Gay wasn't as reliable this year as we've been used to, so I just don't see Rudy starting at the 3. I think if you got Lonnie and DeRozan and you're looking at starting them, I think you have to start Lonnie at the 2. It kind of goes back to what we're saying. That's his natural position. And when you have the height advantage with DeRozan and all, I'd say stick him at the 3 and Lonnie at the 2.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because we all agree that like DeMar and Lonnie are kind of out of position at the 3. Rudy was pretty much a stretch 4 all year. He was pretty much Trey Lyles' backup. So let's say hypothetically they do move DeMar back to the 2, and they give the Lonnie kind of his backup role. So you kind of got, let's see, DJ at the point guard, DeMar and Lonnie at the 2, or DJ and Derek at the 1. I think he can maybe throw Patty in there as well, sometimes at the 1 or 2. And Keldon would really be the 3. Who would back him up? I see a lot of
depends on draft picks.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's why I said
I hope we draft that's why I said I hope we draft that small forward position, that kind of 3-4, because I just see a lot of lack of depth. That's why we're kind of forced to put DeMar in there, and that's why we're forced to put Lonnie Walker at that position. So, but so is it really just depending on who we draft as far as that depth for that 3 position?
I think so, and I think free agency too. We can't forget that. There's going to be a lot of small forwards available in free agency, and we've played DeMar out of position. Who's to say we won't play somebody else out of position? Should it come down to it, we could shock everybody and take another guard on draft night. You never know, and depending on how the free agency situation is working out, that could be justified. If we lose DeMar, Bellinelli, and Forbes, there's 3 guards gone from the rotation, and you might use another one and look for a forward in free agency. But it's one of those things. It's like we say so much. It's kind of up in the air, at least for me. I don't know. What do you think about that, Destin? I know you've got kind of your dream rotation set and what you want. What do you think we look at if DeMar does come back and let's say they draft a forward? Do you bring the forward off the bench? Do you start Lonnie at the 2 and DeRozan at the 3? What's your take on it?
Well, it's very frustrating because similar to what Rob said, it was on one of his podcasts and I was on there. And one thing he said was he doesn't see where DeMar DeRozan fits short-term or long-term.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of in the same camp, even though I love, DeMar DeRozan, and I appreciate – he didn't have a choice to get here, but him coming here, he fit right in for the most part as far as his personality and everything. And, he took it in stride. But, yeah, this whole situation is it's just ugly. And I don't think the offense is going to get any better. He's blatantly hit his ceiling. LaMarcus Aldridge has hit his ceiling. And at this point, it's like, okay, what are we growing towards? So, in my opinion, if he came back, of course he has to start. DeMar DeRozan has to start. And unfortunately, there's no – I'm not saying that he shouldn't start because obviously DeMar DeRozan is talented enough to start.
Yeah.
But you can't even contemplate putting him on the bench because we've seen what happens when you do put him on the bench in certain situations. He just gets really upset. So, all right, so he has to start. So he has to be a small forward. I do not mind Lonnie Walker starting with DeJounte Murray, and I would understand it. As much as I want to see DeJounte Murray with Derek White, I understand that it may not be feasible for both of them to start or play significant minutes together on the court right now how the team is set up. But I would love Lonnie Walker to start. One player that I think that would be really cool as far as I'm trying to think of my ideal lineup, but I think one player that'd be really cool and who's a bona fide starter when he gets the opportunity is Keldon. I think Keldon is one because I understand where Lonnie Walker is coming from. Because if you have Lonnie Walker, okay, you can have him come off the bench, be a facilitator off the bench. He could fit in a lot of places on a team. But with Keldon Johnson, he's so solid with everything he does, and he's so ready for that next level. So I could see him being a starter and taking on that, Danny Green role. And I think he's better than Danny Green, but he could take on that Danny Green role.
That must have been hard for you to say, Harrison.
I'm as high on Keldon as you are on Lonnie, Destin. I don't have, the NBA stats yet to kind of back my opinion up, but, obviously, G League he was dominating, but I saw him play too in Milwaukee in a little stint, and at Dallas, Ty, when I was at that game in San Antonio, the last one before the hiatus, and his tangibles and his intangibles are he just looks so ready for the NBA. Just ready to step up to the challenge of Luka, and he's so aggressive driving to the basket, and he's so strong. He has a very high basketball IQ. He's a dog on defense. I just think he's just fit for today's NBA, and I will, stand on it until at least next season starts, because I'll get sick of saying it. But I still think he could have been a guy that could have been contributing from the start.
He's fundamentally sound. I mean, that's the main thing with him. He's just fundamentally sound. I mean, you can fit him in on any team because of those fundamentals. He just does everything so solid. And I haven't really seen him play a game where he looked nervous or I felt like he wasn't going to slip up. When he plays, it feels like he's been in the league for a while.
Order in the court! Order in the goddamn court!
Sir, you're out of order.